The Clone Wars wage on as many battles have been created. The battle on Geonosis was a resounding success. Our troops successfully infiltrated Amura. Soldiers were prepared for the droid attack on the Wookiees. Noticeably absent from this list has been Kamino. Until now.
Hello boyos, Rich Boy J here back again with another video, and this is going to be yet another long-awaited episode of building Kamino in LEGO. I want to thank everyone who has stood by the channel through all these tumultuous times, just with the big hiatus that has been taken with this series. And I have to say it was super encouraging going to the conventions that I went to this year and having so many people ask me, yo Jay, where's Kamino? Is Kamino still being worked on? Are you done with Kamino? A lot of people would think, oh, like that might get annoying, but it was actually super inspiring and motivating for me to learn that so many people still cared about this series. So if you're one of those people who asked me about Kamino, I was not annoyed at all. I'm actually super excited that there is still a lot of interest in me getting this build done. I have to say, I feel great right now. I'm so happy to be doing this again. It's been so long since I've been able to sit down and record one of these intros, and I really cannot wait to show you guys what I've done so far for this series. Now at this point, I've pretty much talked ad nauseum in other videos about why Kamino has taken, such a long break. But for those of you who are unaware, or maybe you're watching this series sometime in the future and you haven't really watched any of my other videos, the biggest reason that I took a break from doing Kamino and really just uploading on YouTube at all was because I was in my last semester in college. I think at one point in my life, I was really adamant about really uploading consistently while I was in school, and it worked for a little while until it became very apparent that that just was not possible for me, and I was spreading myself so thin, and ultimately my mental health took a pretty big hit. Now, with that being said, I'd like to open up to a larger discussion about mental health and talk to you guys about today's video sponsor, which is BetterHelp. On this channel, and especially in the live streams, we had a lot of group discussions about how LEGO has been our outlet when it comes to stress and bettering our own mental health, but I think I have a resource that can help all of you. BetterHelp is an online therapy service which seeks to make therapy more affordable and accessible to everyone. One of the biggest obstacles in finding a therapist can be just finding someone that you're comfortable talking to. BetterHelp streamlines this process by having you just fill out a questionnaire, and you basically just let them know what are your expectations. They basically streamline the process by matching you up with someone who best meets your needs. And even if at that point, for whatever reason, it just doesn't work out with the person they've chosen for you, you can easily switch out to a new therapist at no extra charge. They offer phone, video, and chat services, so you can choose the communication medium that you're most comfortable with and that best fits your schedule. So I know age might be a consideration here considering the people that I'm talking to. So they offer services for individuals, couples, as well as teenagers. One of my favorite features of BetterHelp is that they actually let you text your therapist at any time, which honestly found shocking. But this type of feature really works for me. I'm the type of person that when it comes to things that really affect my mental health, when they happen, I can't just immediately talk about them. I really have to sit down and take time to process how what I've dealt with has really affected me. So it's nice to have the option just to be able to talk to them at your own pace and your own time, rather than, having to have that scheduled session where you got to get everything out at once. So that's a really big incentive for me personally. So if you're struggling with mental health in any capacity, consider online therapy with BetterHelp. Use my link in the description, betterhelp.com/richboy, and you'll get 10% off your first month of their services, as well as support the channel. So now with that being said, guys, let's dive right into Kamino. I started off this update by building up these little support sections that basically just hold up the walls and the walkways on the edges of the Kamino mock. One of the mistakes I made with this was just deleting a bunch of footage. My original plan was to have a much more lengthy, drawn out, kind of comedic in a sense intro, just showing my return back to this build, and it also involved a little bit of me cleaning up the tables that this mock was sitting on, because this room had mostly just been relegated to storage since I hadn't really been working on the build. But all that accidentally got deleted, so big L on my behalf, but you could at least see that, I did get enough footage to at least start off with the first things that I built. So getting these wall support sections built up was actually crucial to moving forward through the build. Part of getting back accustomed to working on this build was just remembering where I left off and also remembering the things that I had already built for it. I have to say I did have a moment of slight panic when I came back and looked at this and I was trying to figure out where all the floor sections that I had built had gone. And then I remembered that I had actually, extended the half or the quarter dome into a half dome, and I hadn't actually built all these little floor sections for all of this lower level. So I figured, why not start off with getting some of these floor sections built up, really just to finish off the entire lower level, and then we could proceed to working on some of the walls and really just get this entire lower section looking somewhat finished. All right, now you guys can see we have the entire floor of that bottom section installed, which is quite nice. I've never actually seen this much of the full half dome installed, so it actually makes me really happy that I get a somewhat complete view of the MOC so far. One thing that was kind of unfortunate is I ran out of 1x1 dark gray tile, so you'll see there are a lot of these sections in here which will need those tiles filled in. That is an order I've already placed, but not confident at all that it'll be here before I finish up this update. So my immediate next plan is going to be reinstalling the wall sections that I had on this bottom section. So I basically built enough for, this bottom section all the way until about the halfway point, which I believe will be like either here or here. And then to finish off the episode, what I'd really, really like to do is get some wall sections built up going across all the way to the end over there. I think if I could finish off this episode with basically a full row of floors for that bottom section, or bottom level rather, and a full row of walls for that bottom row, I'll be quite happy with that progress. I know it's not, a ton of progress for how long it's been in terms of the hiatus of this build, but I will say it was quite a lot for me to get back into this build. Not because I didn't want to, but just because there were so many complex things going on with this MOC. Like, I don't think I've really even done much so far, but this by far has to be just the most complex build that I've ever worked on. So just getting myself back accustomed to certain techniques I did in certain places of this and why I did certain things. And it certainly didn't help that, a lot of it fell on the floor when I was moving it into this room. So, there's a lot of excuses, but I just want to explain that there are a lot of setbacks and a lot of things that made it maybe more difficult to get back into this MOC as opposed to just your average MOC where you can just go back to a section and start building up. With this particular type of build, you can't just pick a section and start building. You really got to think every single part of this build through, because the structure matters, the shapes matter, everything interacts with each other in some way or another. So all those things need to be taken into consideration. Otherwise, building two big half domes like this just would not work whatsoever. So I'm going to go ahead and take a look through my collection of wall pieces. I got them sitting over in a bin over there, as well as a bin next to it. This normally would not be that difficult, but the issue was when I first started, I built a bunch of wall sections for this top level as well. I'm not really going to worry about those for this update, but what it does mean is I'm going to have to differentiate between the ones that go up here and the ones that go down there. And there are quite a few repeated sections. So I'm going to have to be sure I, put them in the correct orientation down here and make sure I leave the correct ones up here from when we get to that second level. So let's go ahead and take a look at those and we can see how that goes. After scouring old photos, videos, and pretty much any reference material that I could find from what I had already built on Kamino, I was able to figure out which wall sections went in which places on the upper and lower levels. Using this as a basis, I went ahead and basically figured out how I wanted to continue the pattern of walls moving on to the empty lower sections that I hadn't yet built up. Alright guys, after that intense building session, we have completed about 11 or so of these individual wall panels, and this, added with what I already have, should be enough to finish up the entire bottom level on that first dome, which is awesome. This was quite an arduous process. I thought this would go a lot quicker than it did, but I spent a lot of the initial part of this just trying to not only, I guess, map what I had done previously. This is a template of one of the ones I did before, but I had to mirror it. And I don't know, I just made a bunch of just dumb mathematical issues and ended up having to take apart these two front sections more times than I would like to admit. And it also just came from the fact that this middle section right here is slightly different in its construction. The gaps are just ever so slightly different that I needed to build it just a bit differently, which meant that, I also had to change this one up a little bit, and then that just caused issues on its own. But happy enough that we were able to get this done. You'll see there are some colors that do still need to be substituted in, like these dark red parts right here, which is also quite funny just because, like, when I was initially doing the first door that I built, I ran into the same issue. These parts were only in the Luke Skywalker helmet set, and I want to say that had to be over a year ago, and to this day, those are still exclusive to that set. So I've had a bricks and pieces order or pick a brick order placed for almost a month now, waiting to get these in the right color. So hopefully that'll show up soon enough so I can get these, looking the way they should. But other than that, I didn't really show too much off of like the techniques in these walls, mostly just because these are almost exact duplicates of the ones that I had on the other side of the dome. But the only difference is I mirrored it because the idea is basically, I have obviously the dome and just the way the walls are constructed. One side is a panel like that, and then one side is a flat wall. And they all kind of come to this middle section that has plates on either side. So my goal was, long story short, to have, one side with the panels on one side and then meet with this, and then the opposite side, the panels would come and meet with the opposite side of this middle wall. So hopefully that makes sense to you guys. But this is actually super exciting. I can't wait to see what these all look like when I get them placed on the mock. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and dive into the final part of this video. After all the hard work of going and building all of those wall sections, I was rewarded by being able to place them all on the mock. This was pretty straightforward. The only real thing I had to consider when placing these on the mock was where the little support sections for the walls sat behind them, only because some of these sections have light fixtures built into them, meaning I'm going to need to put LEDs behind them. So they basically had to be oriented in such a way where the area where the light would be wouldn't interfere with the supports behind the walls. Man, and just like that, we have a wall that starts on this side and then proceeds to stretch all the way to the opposite side of the Kamino half dome. This is honestly kind of crazy. Like, when I designed and built this, I didn't realize just how difficult it would be to be able to see all of the wall from one angle. But that's actually, I don't know, kind of cool. I feel like it gives me an incentive to go look around the other sides to just be able to check all parts of this build out. But I am just ecstatic about this progress. I know this build series in general has been a weird combination of, taking a few steps forwards and then maybe taking some steps backwards as well, especially with the fact that, there's been times where you guys have seen an actual dome at the top of it, but I've had to kind of take that apart, mostly because, a lot of the structure fell apart when I tried to move it into this room. But I think we're finally at a point where we're exclusively going to be moving forward. And I think seeing this full half dome and just the full wall section and the floor on the bottom there complete, I think that's really really inspired me. Like I said, this is a really difficult build for me to get back into, just to try to remember all the little intricacies and nuances that I needed to basically take account of to make sure this build even worked. But man, words cannot describe how happy I am right now. And I'm feeling so much more confident than I have been in really the past year in terms of just being able to work on this thing and get it completed. I think I can once again kind of see the finish line. We're still not anywhere close to being done, but I have confidence. I'm building with confidence, and that is always super important, especially when you're doing something large scale like this. So to put things into perspective, I guess a little bit, this was the side that we started with, and then it basically came out to this middle section right here. This is actually kind of where the middle of the dome is, and then I built up that wall, and I built up all the rest of them going along that way. So quite a bit of progress done. I was kind of scared when I first, made the decision of like, what do I want to come back with? What do I want to show off and have completed for the first episode back in Kamino? And then just I realized with parts and time that this made the most sense as a stopping point. And I was like, man, like, are people really going to be satisfied with that? I'm not really sure. But seeing this now, I cannot be happier. I think this was the perfect way for us to come back to Kamino, the perfect way to bring a little bit of the old back in with the new, which was actually super important for me just because, like I said, I needed to refamiliarize myself with this build. I kind of needed to go back through the steps of building these floor sections again and building the wall sections again. I've learned so much just through that and just like measurements of the mock, just little things that you take for granted that you kind of just remember when you're working on something. But when you take as long of a break as I have from this thing, kind of forget some things. So I'm not going to ramble on too much about it. I just want to give you guys a few more looks at it. Man, I'm a happy boy right now. I am a happy boyo right now. So I think this is going to conclude this week's episode, guys. I am I'm just so freaking happy right now. Kamino is finally back, guys. You've been waiting for it. Kamino is finally here, and we had actual progress. So let's go ahead and move to the outro of the video. All right, guys, that's going to bring this week's episode of Kamino to a close. I just feel so happy right now. I feel so relieved that I was able to finally dive back into this thing and make more progress on this mock, and really just to show all you guys. I mean, I feel like when you start a series like this, you start a commitment to it, you start a commitment to the build, but it's also maybe a promise to the viewers that, yeah, I'm going to see this thing through. And it was really weird experience with me having so many people genuinely concerned as to whether or not I was going to see a mock through to the end. Because, since I've been doing this from Scarif, Crate, Vardos, Starkiller, that was never in question for me, I don't think, at all. But there were a lot of doubts about this one for whatever reason, just due to the schedule, the life changes that have happened since I have started this build. But I do want to assure you guys that I am absolutely in this mock for the long haul. I think that when it's all said and done, when this thing is completed, this will be one of those really special builds. That's really with anything I build, especially at this scale, I want it to kind of have staying power, so to speak. Be one of those builds that people go back to is like a cornerstone, like, oh yeah, like when this guy built this, like it was a significant moment in the history of Lego Star Wars builds, which I know sounds like a lot to say when it comes to these mocks, but that's honestly the way I look at it, and that's the pressure and the kind of standards that I put on myself as a builder at this point to create things that people will remember, that people will want to show their friends, that will inspire people, and that's ultimately why I do this. That's why I do this channel. That's why I'm so excited to buy all these sets and buy all these pieces and make this art and ultimately express myself. So definitely let me know in the comment section what you guys thought about the video this week. I would like to say, I don't want to make any promises here because I know how this has gone, but I do want to say that this is more than likely going to resume being a weekly series. At this point, I have no reason for it not to, other than if just the weird things come up. And I mean, I'm not completely free now. Like, my brother is in school right now. He's going to be playing football. So a bit of my time is going to be devoted to going to his games, watching his games, supporting him in whatever way possible. But on the Kamino and YouTube side of things, it is certainly my goal to return this to a weekly series. And hopefully we can have this thing done by the end of the year. I think if I can finish up around Christmas, I think that'd be freaking awesome. I know, I mean, I always say, like, Christmas is kind of the goal for a lot of mocks I've done in the past, and it never quite ends up that way. And I'm not certainly going to be heartbroken if that doesn't end up being the case for this mock. But I think, like, I don't know, it'll be a really good just time for me, and, like, having this mock done around, like, the Christmas season, the holiday season, I think that would be really cool. So right now, that's my goal for it, but we got a lot of work to do in order to get there. So I want to go ahead and end up this video. If you guys like what I do, go ahead and support the video by hitting the like button, support the channel by smashing that subscribe button, and I'll be back again very soon.